I'm in the village of Beddgelert in the county of Gwynedd in Wales. In English, the name of the village would translate to the grave of Gelert. Today I'll be talking about the legend of Gelert the dog. The village is best known for the legend of Gelert, but it has two other claims to fame. On one evening in 1949, a very rare event happened in the village. The village was lit up by a blue light, followed by a big bang. A meteorite had struck the Prince of Wales Hotel in the village. The meteor went through the building like a knife through butter, and it was discovered in the morning embedded into the floorboards of the ground floor. The meteor was the size of a tennis ball, and it was only the second such incident to happen in Wales, or the only second recorded incident anyway. The other claim to fame that this tiny little village has relates to the Royal Goat Hotel. In 1958, the film The Inn of the Sixth Happiness was filmed in this area, and the cast and crew stayed at this hotel, including Hollywood legend Ingrid Bergman. There's a plaque in the village that mentions the filming of The Inn of the Sixth Happiness. Got the graves of a rich family here, the Spooner family grave. Here lies Charles Easton Spooner, 1818 to 1889, secretary and engineer of the Festiniog Railway Company, engineer to the North Wales Narrow Gauge Railways Company, and also his wife Mary Ann, 1822 to 1860. And their three children, John, Eryri, James Alfred and Mary Elizabeth. And this is interesting, nearby lies the grave of Elizabeth Price, 1830 to 1864, nurse to the Spooner family. And here's her grave. Sacred to the memory of Elizabeth Price, faithful servant of Charles Easton Spooner, Esquire, died 17th of January 1864. Oh, she was only 29 years of age. I looked into this a little bit and I found out that one of the Spooner children, Mary Elizabeth, died of typhoid in 1964. And it appears that her nurse, Elizabeth Price, died 2 days later, presumably also as a result of the typhoid outbreak. There seems to be an error on this plaque for the birth year of Elizabeth Price. The village name translates to the grave of Gelert, but of course Gelert is a dog and he wasn't buried in this graveyard. But he's buried a short distance away from here. The story goes that the native princes of Wales had a royal court in the village of Beddgelert. It's said that Llewelyn the Great would stay here sometimes and go hunting with his favourite hound, Gelert. Prince Llewelyn decided to go hunting one day, but there was no sign of Gelert. He wasn't particularly worried, he just assumed that Gelert would eventually turn up, so he went hunting with the rest of his hounds. When Prince Llewelyn returned from the hunt, he was greeted by Gelert, who came bounding towards him, his jaws dripping with blood. The prince was shocked, and a horrible thought came to his mind. Was the blood on the dog's muzzle that of his 1-year-old son? His worst fears were realised when he saw the child's nursery. The cradle had been upturned, and the walls were splattered with blood. He searched for the child, but there was no sign of him. Llewelyn was convinced that his faithful Hound had killed his son. Mad with grief, he took his sword and plunged it into Gelert's heart. As the dog howled in his death agony, Llewelyn heard a child's cry coming from underneath the upturned cradle. It was his son, and he was unharmed. Beside the child there was a dead wolf. Obviously he had been killed by the brave Gelert. Llewelyn was struck with remorse, and he carried the body of his faithful dog to a spot not far from where I am now. To this day, a cairn of stones marks the spot where Llewelyn buried Gelert. Even though it's mid-February, there's quite a few people about. But it looks like I'm gonna get the gravesite to myself, at least for a couple of minutes. The grave is just in front of me now. And here it is, the grave of Gelert the Hound. There's two plaques which tell the story of Gelert. One's in Welsh and the other one's in English. I'll take a photograph of them and I'll put it on my Instagram account if anybody wants to have a look. Now, a few feet away from the grave there's a sculpture of Gelert. Or there was last time I was here anyway. Let's have a look. Ah, yeah. Here we are. Now, there's a twist to the story. There may or may not be some truth to the legend. But if it did happen, it certainly didn't happen here in Beddgelert. In 1793, a man called David Pritchard came to live in Beddgelert, and he was the landlord of the Royal Goat Inn. And he obviously knew of this story, even though the story wasn't related to the village. The village name was already called Beddgelert, or Gelert's grave. It would appear that David Griffith had created the grave to serve as a tourist attraction, so that his hotel would benefit from the extra trade. And his plan certainly worked. Beddgelert is still receiving a lot of tourists 200 years after he created the fake grave.